What is love to you? What does love mean to you? What are the philosophies that you hold close to your heart? What happens when you live out various emotions?
Okay, let's get to it. What up, YouTube? It's me, Rizil, back on the channel with another one, and today I want to do a 2-for-1. That means 2 reactions for one day. But I don't know how much time I have between editing, shooting, and everything I've been doing today. But I'm gonna try and do my best with it. I'm gonna do this like more of like a social issue reaction, and then I'm gonna try and do a music reaction after this. And this one is Thomas Sowell. I've seen him or heard his stuff here and there, and I've wanted to delve more into what he talks about and everything. So I'm gonna see whether this works out in terms of me like watching a Thomas Sowell video, maybe reacting to what he's saying. Because this just popped up on my YouTube, which is interesting not only to me, but because I've been saying this on this channel from time to time in different reactions, where I was like, I don't know what is this hype or what has been this hype for the longest, even me growing up reading the Bible about like hating Jewish people. Like, I've never truly understood why Jews are so like hated, or there's this thing with like different people in different parts of the world and Jews. I don't understand why they are disliked, I understand why or not maybe, but people discriminate against like us black people, and I'll further describe it down the line of this video, but I don't understand the whole hating the Jews thing. And this one, I saw it popped up on my YouTube now. It is Thomas Sowell, he basically describes why there is hate for the Jews. And we're gonna delve into it, guys. We're gonna see what he has to say, and hey, leave your comments below to discuss like your own experiences, your own knowledge on this matter. Let's get to it.
The hostility of these people in countries around the world is out of all proportion to that to any other kind of group I can think of.
I want to show you one other thing. Since we've done Douglas Murray and we've done Jordan Peterson, how about I give you the trifecta of sanity? This is a video of Thomas Sowell. This is from probably 25 years ago. Thomas Sowell being asked about why anti-Semitism is so prevalent in history.
You have a chapter, that's the first chapter is black rednecks and white liberals. The second chapter is, are Jews generic?
Mm-hmm.
Why the jump from black rednecks and white liberals to are Jews generic? What's the point?
Well, this book is really about ethnic and cultural issues in general. So there's a chapter on the Jews, there's a chapter on the Germans, and then there's a chapter on history in general. So they're lumped together because they're all cultural ethnic issues. Fascinating story, because among the middleman minorities, of which the Jews are most prominent, the hostility of these people in countries around the world is out of all proportion to that to any other kind of group I can think of. In terms of the violence, the number of Chinese killed, let's say, in 1 year, and by mob action, exceeds all the blacks lynched in the entire history of the United States. And the number of Armenians killed in Turkey, during the First World War, is greater than that. And of course, the number of Jews slaughtered on a number of occasions in history, even before the Holocaust, is greater than that. So that the question is, why this particular kind of people are the targets of so much venomous hatred? And I think the answer is that they not only succeed, they succeed in a way which is a threat to the egos of other people. But the guy who comes here, let's say from Vietnam or Korea, and arrives here with little more than the clothes on his back and a few words of broken English, and a decade later he has his own little business, and you see his son a few years after that getting ready to go off to Harvard or MIT. You've got to ask yourself, you either got to, you've got to hate yourself for saying, my God, I've been stagnating, this guy was nothing, and now he's risen up, or you're going to have to hate him. Years ago, one official of one of the Jewish organizations in New York asked me, well, what can Jews themselves do in order to minimize the hostility they face? I gave him a one-word answer: fail. Because as long as you succeed, you're going to be hated.
Oh, shit.
I personally would rather succeed and be hated than fail and be loved. And that probably is the story of the Jews. The interesting thing with Israel related to all this is you have Jews who are not only succeeding They're struggling over this last month, obviously, but there's a sense. I was talking to an Israeli friend last night. There's a sense in the country that they are going to be stronger than ever on the other side of this. That this is ironically bringing them together. It's sort of baked in the code. It's what every Jewish holiday is about. Oh, they killed a whole bunch of us. They didn't kill all of us. We're still here. Let's eat. And Jews still are here. That is why they particularly hate Israel, because it's a place where not only Jews are succeeding, but then Jews refuse to fail, and they've got weapons to make sure that that doesn't happen.
That's such an interesting, beautiful, and powerful take, honestly, guys. Because I've discussed this with like a couple of friends of mine from time to time, in terms of my knowledge, in terms of the Jewish people, etc. Me being a Christian, growing up in a Christian household, basically being the son of a pastor, and my father didn't have to force me to read the Bible. I was sort of like we were sort of like poor, so I read the Bible purely out of like boredom and just became really addicted to the stories and everything. And since I was a child, one thing I did notice was even in the Bible, and it's telling the stories of the Jews, it's how this nation of slaves, this nation of like it literally started off with Abraham. I think he was a Syrian. Abraham was a Syrian, Abraham at that time, and then he came up out of his father's house, etc., and then he established himself in a foreign country. He goes through a couple of trials and tribulations, but just like this story of like an immigrant who leaves with basically the shirt on his back or whatever, and then like succeeds in another country, he sort of comes up like that and becomes very successful. And this trend goes on with his children from time to time, no matter where they move, no matter how bad they're doing. So even after slavery in Egypt, and this nation of slaves moved from Egypt all the way to the promised land God gave them, when they basically even just asked, listen, we're not going to attack you, we're not going to do shit, we just want to get from point A to point B, it says multiple tribes wouldn't even allow them to do that. Multiple tribes, in a tumultuous time where everyone is attacking everyone, were sort of being very abrasive to them. And that abrasiveness didn't come from just like normal abrasiveness or normal rivalry. These tribes and these nations heard of what God, not to make it religious, I'm just telling the story of what God did for them, or the triumphs they had. For people who don't believe in God, basically the triumphs they had as a nation who weren't expected to win in Egypt, and how they were able to be liberated by themselves and by their God, and move from one bad situation to another one and establish themselves as truly prominent. And those nations were heavily threatened, and so they attacked them. I don't know if any of you believe in that story, those stories in the Bible, but it's so prevalent even to this day. Because I've asked from, I think it was like a South Park video or something, where I asked the first time on this reaction. I've never understood this whole Jewish like hate thing, this anti-Semitism thing, because me growing up the way I grew up in South Africa and like experiencing racism and xenophobia and everything, I knew why people disliked black people. I knew why they maybe even hated me, especially growing up in the Indian community or whatever. You know, there were certain things that I instilled with like different races, especially honestly the lighter skinned races, that make them feel like these people are inferior or whatever, and they're inferior to what we believe in, so we're gonna pick on or hate on them, right? Not to say all of you, whether you're white or whatever, you do that, but I'm just saying in general, like in terms of the differences of cultures, if you even look at the differences of our cultures, white people or whatever, even like not even just white people, even like there's a unison, even Indians, they're the same way. They prioritize maybe thin noses, maybe what you call a thin figure, like this thing of like, oh, am I fat? Oh, do I look fat? Oh, do I look fat in these jeans? Like, oh, you're so skinny, I want to be just like you. That is prevalent within those cultures. Whereas us, in our cultures, voluptuousness, a sort of like weight, like thick women, etc. Things like that are deemed like we like that shit, So it's a difference between cultures, and the way one culture is trained or the other culture is trained. It's like we like this instead of this. So if we see a lot of the shit that we don't like with another people, we don't like them and they're inferior to us. And that's a lot of the stuff that I experience. Being picked on for my skin, my like I'm so black. Your nose is big. You're a monkey. Go back to your country. It's just all of that shit. So even though it's maybe it's out of ignorance or etc. This shit that you've been taught basically in your culture or whatever, or like in terms of beauty standards, it's not real. You know exactly why they hate what they hate. Culturally, they've built themselves or whatever to admire certain things, and we as black people, we are the opposite. We are the opposite of it. We are a whole different wave. You understand? So that I get. Now the thing with the Jews is, even I said it even before this video, I said it in another reaction where I was like, every time I see the reasons of why people hate the Jews, it always has something to do with success. Oh, they make so much money. Oh, they're so successful. Oh, they have power and control over this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, one. And I'm always like, this is shit that we have been taught by society to admire. Do you understand what I'm like? This is stuff that even like growing up, like all of us, no matter what color or creed, whether you're black, Indian, mixed race, white, Asian, whatever you are, we have literally been told this is stuff that you are to admire. And then when we see a certain people doing that to a very high extent, no matter what, to the point where you gotta be like, man, God, these are really God's chosen people. I can see now why it would stoke some feelings of jealousy and some feelings of, oh, they're gonna take us over if we don't 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in those type of people. But how do we solve that feeling within ourselves? Honestly, because me personally, I haven't grown up around anti-Semitism, guys. Most of the racism and like anti this and that I've grown up with has mostly between, South Africa is has a very tumultuous past with these issues, but these issues don't pertain in terms of like they pertain mostly in terms of like race and like the color and the creed. So there'll be issues between maybe the Indians and the blacks. Indians have racism even within their own like communities, etc. It's not like everyone is racist. Like me growing up the way I grew up, that made me realize everyone in this world can be racist. It's not a race thing. You can't say white people were born to be evil. Like I see some of these things sometimes when some shit is revealed in terms of in the past, like even this morning I saw in this video, in the past these white people, like white leaders, were discussing how to wipe out Africans. Here's recorded footage, and then you see like these interviews of like white leaders and all of that coming up with plans to like eradicate somewhat of the black, like some of the African populace and everything and stuff. And but that's only a select few people. A select few people have these issues. Everyone else, you can't say that a white baby was born to be raped. You can't look at a child and say you were born evil. That is why I thank God I went through what I went through, because I can easily say it's not a white thing, it's not a black, it's a human thing, basically, guys. And in terms of all of these things, in terms of what, like how it goes, especially in South Africa, which they're still suffering with today, I can honestly say, guys, that this thing, it starts with conversation. It starts with conversation, because most of these things develop when some people see another people succeeding on the other side of the river, and then they've never talked to those people before, so they come up with their own ideas. It starts with basic conversation. Because as I said, especially with the way I've grown up, I can see why culturally people would be disliking certain things about a certain race, because they are the opposite of what you guys are and what you have like been wired to like, etc., etc. But this thing with the whole Jews thing has always been baffling to me, and I think it's a thing that it really requires more conversation to see how we can eradicate this type of unnecessary hate. Because for it to reach such a boiling point that people can be exterminated for the simple thing of like lending what you call Edward Longshanks money for his campaigns, for him to turn around and start instituting laws for the termination of Jews within England back then, bro. And then the continuation all the way into Eastern Europe with the way they were tortured and raped and killed deep in Russia and shit. Bro, it's a lot, bro. It's a lot, guys. I'm sorry for rambling. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the post notifications, and start this conversation if you're interested. These videos usually go like, it could go either way. You take care.
Okay, end of your doom, son of the moon, but I shine like the sun. How many number ones needed for a hell of a run? Y'all act like women at that time of the month. I've been forced to recognize the real world, but